Can you?
So, if you don't mind, before we start, we need to put our headsets. If you haven't had one, please pick one up here. Because anything I'm going to be speaking is going to go through your headsets. You're not going to be able to hear me much. I will still try to project my voice, but you might not.
Hi. ¿Sabes cuando me has tomado esa foto? Me acordaba. Okay. Karen, can you hear me? Okay, so whoever joins the session, if you are just joining, please pick up your headphones and have a seat, please. So the task that I have today is to open officially the COP Resilience Hub for COP29. Who would believe that, this is the fourth year in a row that we've been doing this? And it's been a beautiful journey to watch and to be part of. My name is Jorge Gastelumendi. I'm the Senior Director of the Climate Resilience Center at the Atlantic Council. And 5 years ago, actually, we decided with a Global Resilience Partnership to create this idea of a resilience hub. And since then, we've been bringing our partners to a table that I will mention afterwards. But it's been 4 years of learning, and it's been 4 years of great accomplishments. And we look to continue doing this over time. So I just wanted to give a big thanks to our partnership with the Global Resilience Partnership, and also indicate that this hub will try again to do what we did the previous 3 years, which is create a window between the outside world that is not participating in the COP and the world that is happening here. There are two worlds that hopefully at some point collide and complement each other and overlap, but not always. So the challenge this week is to create that voices, to bring those voices to the table, to elevate the work that is happening around the world, for actors outside the world to see it, but also for the negotiators that are out there negotiating to learn more about how we do things in the real world, and how communities that might not have the voices that they deserve should be listened, and we should learn about how things are done and what are the needs that they have. As I said, we've learned over the past 3 years many things. One of the things that we learned is that there is more that could be done by the actions that are happening during this week at the Resilience Hub. So we have organized our sessions and our week through a set of challenges that I'll mention this briefly. But the idea is that we can capture lessons from those challenges coming out of this week, and we can elevate that to put it in a call to action on resilience and adaptation to the COP30 presidency. We are going to have a set of sessions this week, actually, on COP30 in Brazil, and Brazilian actors are going to be participating this week here. And so the idea is that we can elevate the voices of what's happening this week, so the presidency can take that all throughout the year until next COP in Belém. The 6 challenges that we are going to address this week are the following. First, one is anticipating and managing economic disruption and closing finance gaps. It's a huge challenge, and it's going to cut across all the sessions that we are hosting this week. 2, second challenge is addressing and overcoming food and water insecurity. The third is promoting nature-positive action to help recover from and prevent further biodiversity loss and environmental degradation. If there's any lesson that came out of CBD COP16 in Cali, is that the overlap between climate change and biodiversity loss is even more and more evident, and we need to figure out ways in which we can bring them together to solve issues. The fourth challenge is building stronger, safer urban communities where everyone can thrive. The fifth, preparing for extreme weather events and improve disaster recovery efforts. And the final one is to ensure the incorporation of culture and indigenous and local knowledge at every level of decision making. And that's exactly what we're going to have today to start with the opening of the hub. We're going to look into that 6th challenge and how that cuts across all the work that we should be doing, and how we could bring other actors to a table that usually are not sitting at the table. The whole spirit and purpose of this hub, when we devised it 5 years ago, was to bring voices that usually are not heard. Was to bring the frontline communities to be seen as relevant actors, and the work that they're doing and the actions they're taking on the ground as such relevant, and even more relevant sometimes than political discussions. So with that, let me just close with sharing my deep gratitude for the Global Resilience Partnership, but also to the International Center for Climate Change and Development, ICAT, the Slum Dwellers International, Climate and Development Knowledge Network and South North, and Fundación Avina, for their partnership and leadership to make this hub a success, as we hope it is. The hub itself, as you see this beautiful setup, couldn't have been a reality without the help and the logistical support of many, many actors. But I just want to mention, I'm sure that I'm going to miss a lot of names, but I just want to mention 3 names. Karen Benny, Sarah Clark, and Lauren Parker, as the ones that have made this place a reality and a beautiful place to have throughout the week. And I want to thank, finally, all the session hosts that have put a lot of time on creating the sessions, creating the content, bringing partners to the table, and being helpful with that. Before I close, actually as a closing, I would like now to turn to the next phase, the next step of our session, which is invite the wisdom keepers, who will share core messages from the perspective of a localized, nature-positive world, and share policies to drive us toward an equitable and resilient future. So with that, the wisdom keepers, please, thanks for joining us, and please I invite you to the floor. Thank you. No.
It's a big pleasure to be here. The Wisdom Keeper delegation is the second time we have been together. Last year we were in Dubai. But let me tell you that we have been following up ever since the Earth Summit. Myself, I was in Rio, and I saw how toward a more resilient world. However, we are not still there. We are not living better than those years. Actually, losing possibilities because there is bioculture, there is lack of respect for life. Even science, neutral, even science that supposedly is neutral is not. Science, most of the science has betrayed life systems. It has served for the extraction. It has served to really not respect life systems. And we know it. We know it because we come from original nations and peoples, and we have suffered colonization. We have suffered extraction. And until today, why governments are still using fossil fuels? The so-called fossil fuels for us, they have to be underground. It's the blood, it's the energy of Mother Earth. And this produce enough energy for us and for life to flourish. So we need to recover as human beings, as human species, the collective dignity that we need. We need to remember who we are. We need to remember the original instructions and the original principles to behave. We have misbehaved, and this is the fact why we are here, to let you know that we are not just taking care of 80% of biodiversity. We are not just taking care about the 80% of original nations and peoples. We pray for all of this planet. We take care about all life systems. But of course, we're in danger. And we are now hearing these categories as to be resilient. Original nations and peoples, we are the most resilient beings in the world. We are. And we want to call for this, for you to come to this unification process. If your institution, if your government, if your people, if your community are not in alignment for the care of life, you need to be in transit for that. You need to recover this human experience because we are just one another species in the world. And we are calling to go from the anthropocentric thought to the ecocentric and cosmocentric thought. This is the time. And that's the reason, as wisdom keepers, we are humbled to be here. And we are humbled to be an honor to be invited to the Resilient Hub because we all need to be resilient. We all need to understand that we are just here for a while, but what kind of work we are delivering, what kind of seeds we are delivering, and what kind of world we are transpassing for the future. And remember, we cannot live in the past, but we have to honor the past. And we cannot live in the future, but we have to honor the future. And we just live in between. And that's the reason we have the responsibility to be, to feel, to act together. This is the world we want, to come together in such a responsible way so we can thrive and we can flourish once again as human beings. brothers and sisters, now we have this beautiful delegation. I'm going to pass the word to my beloved and grandmother, Helen Denmark, from the Sapmi Nation. Dikamadi Washingtini. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
We are gathered here today because we want a change in the world. We want to live a healthy life. But it all depends of what we choose to do. If we're choosing of acting or not acting, because as my brother said, we have a life before, and that life has been walking, he's been caring for us, he's been grounding us. So to be grounded today is very, very important because we are living in a world that is very ungrounded. We are living in a world where we have forgotten where we come from, where we even not know how to reconnect, to come back to the connection. And one part that is so deeply important that we see where I come from is a deeply listening to the silence, because we are living in a world of so many influence. But from the beginning, we are one body, and this body, Mother Earth, is holding us 24 hours. I have been done that for century back, from the beginning of the beginning. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Aya, and I'm from Egypt and Palestine. So as we start COP today, it's very important to remember the Palestinian people who are facing 1 year of genocide, 1 year of starvation, 1 year of dehumanization. And it's also important to note that the face of this genocide is not separate from what's happening in the climate crisis. It's the same parasitic worldview that thrives on extraction, accumulation, and expansion. And this is what we need to cure. We need to understand that less is more. We need to help one another. We need to understand reciprocity. So with that, I want to call in, as we commence here in the COP, I want to call in a few energies. First, I want to call in discernment. Discernment to false solutions. Discernment to smoke mirrors over here. Because we don't have time to waste. We're here for action. We're not here to have some fancy talks and come to panels. This is serious. We're here for the future generations. So I also want to call the energy of peace. I also want to call the energy of protection, and I want to make a small calling of the elements in my own language. So I'll just take a moment. Unadi, unadi, unadi. أنادي أنادي للرياح أنادي أنادي للمياه أنادي أنادي للنار أنادي أنادي للأرض أنادي يا إلهي أنادي لكل مكونات الحياة أنادي أنادي لله أنادي للسلام أنادي للمحبة أنادي 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 أنادي. And with this, we call in the elements, we call in the higher spirits to be with us, to guide us. And I give you thanks. I'm grateful for us to be here to share our voice. And I pray that we honor the commitment that we have to the future generations. I'll pass on to Jacob.
Yes, okay. Anian Apchugik, Hohep Vaya, Bakap Hep Vaya, Jacob Johns. My name is Jacob Johns. I'm Hopi and Akimaratam. I come from the United States. In the United States, we have just recently had an election that puts the environment and, the world possibly in peril. And as indigenous people who have been colonized and were killed off by the American government, we still stand. And as indigenous people globally have suffered at the hands of colonization, we are here to tell you that we are still here, we still fight, and we return. And we invite humanity itself to remember the moral obligations that we have that was passed down through your genealogy, that we are not separate from you, that we are a portion, and that we are no longer nation states or people from different countries, but we are humanity. And this recognition is what will pull us out of the crisis that we are in now, where we exchange one community's health for another. As Americans coming from a rich nation, we understand the impacts that the American government has had on the world as far as the greenhouse gases that have been emitted historically by our nation. We understand that our nation needs to pay up their fair share of what has happened to the global south and to other countries who are developing and suffering at the hands of the impending climate collapse that they had nothing to do with. We encourage our governments to contribute grants in the sum of $5 trillion that is not sent out as a way for governments to make profit. The climate crisis is not meant to be filling the pockets of anyone, but this money that should be going into international climate funds needs to be a grant-based system that should be having direct access to indigenous peoples globally. We as indigenous people stand together in solidarity, and we demand that we have direct access to climate finance funds without having to go to colonial governments or oppressive systems who have committed genocide on the lands in the name of profit. I would like to call into this space with our family and with all of you here, blessing for this light. Oh, how dare
energies for the work to come. May it be blessed. May it stand strong. May it be resilient. Namihi, Namihi, Namihi Aroha. Kia ora, everybody, and blessings for this convergence of COP29.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You can follow us on a wisdomkeepersdelegation.org, and you can also follow us on Instagram throughout this whole journey of COP and all of the work that we do underneath the umbrella of the UNFCCC on Instagram at Wisdom Delegation. Much love to all of you. Thank you for your time, and please hear our words, feel our energy, and take this with you into the next 2 weeks. And remember to stay hydrated and get rest.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Such an opportune moment to call upon our next speaker, Her Excellency Razan Al Mubarak, the high-level champion for COP28. Razan, over to you. I will not spend any time talking about anything. This is such a lovely opportunity. Thank you so much. Please do.
Is it afternoon time? Yes, it is. Good afternoon, everyone. Let's first reflect on what we just heard, because I think it resonated with me at least, and I'm sure it resonated with many of the members in this audience and beyond. What resonated with me is we don't only need political will, because politics come and go. We don't only need science, because science gets proved and then gets proven again. What we do need is wisdom. Wisdom that shows us the true face of what happens when we have solidarity. Wisdom that puts peace above all else. And wisdom that protects us from rhetoric. Dear colleagues, dear friends, it's an honor to stand before you as the UN high-level champion for COP28. In this role, alongside many of you in this room, we are committed and continue to be committed to mobilize the collective power of the community that is collectively embodied in civil society, in local governments, local communities, indigenous peoples, and youth, because we recognize to build resilience in the face of climate change that is indeed here, we must work together. It is a whole of society challenge that will require a whole of society approach, and no one can be left behind. We also find ourselves at a turning point. It is no longer about abstract goals or distant future. It is about urgent action that needs to happen now, and action to empower the world's most vulnerable people around the world. Throughout my tenure as high-level champion, I have been working proudly with the Resilience Hub across COPs. The Resilience Hub is not only a home to the Race to Resilience campaign over the past 4 years, but it also ensured that adaptation and resilience remain firmly at the top of the climate change agenda. Thank you, Resilience Hub, for all that you do. Thank you for demonstrating that resilience building is not a one-size-fits-all endeavor. It does, as I stated before, require an authentic whole-of-society approach. Thank you for strengthening the narrative. Effective adaptation requires strategies that are locally driven, that are culturally informed, and are supported by strong, inclusive governance systems. Thank you for also applying regional voices through regional hubs, ensuring that those who cannot attend the COPs in person are duly represented and duly heard. Thank you for championing the Sharm el-Sheikh adaptation agenda and the Race to Resilience campaign with equal rigor. And thank you for ensuring that you are always a place where we can come together as a community of practice, as a community of solidarity, to ensure that work in the space of both resilience and adaptation meets the people where they are. It is a great pleasure to be with you here today, and I look forward to our continued partnership with the high-level champions at COP29 and beyond. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. With that lovely message of channeling our collective wisdom, thank you so much. I invite our colleagues who've been working relentlessly for the last 3 years to champion the voices of those who aren't necessarily present here, our regional hub leads. I invite Paz Gonzalez from Avina Foundation. I invite Elizabeth Wethuti, if you could come forward, and Noor Elahi from ACAD. They are representing their regions. Elizabeth is also a young person whose voice is extremely important as a woman of color in this room, both Paz and Elizabeth. Thank you so much for being here. And I'll do one last check for a missing panelist. You know how these things go. Someone's lost. It's the first day. Reinhardt from STI, if you're here, could you raise your hand up? And no, maybe he's missed it. Maybe he's still in the queues. That's all right. We shall have him duly represented. Reinhardt's from STI. We're missing him, but we shall carry on. And on the other side, can I also invite Susan Chomba, who's the Global Ambassador from the Race to Resilience? Susan, thank you. And we have Debbie from FCDO. Debbie, could we have you here? I will, as I ask you to speak, can I also ask you to introduce yourselves so that I don't make mistakes with your designations, with your organizations? It would be great if you could begin with introducing yourselves as you speak. The panel will move this way. So the panel starts with the regional hub leads presenting what their priorities are, and they will probably pass on or attempt to pass on the torch to some of our decision makers who are in positions where they can raise these priorities and amplify them on platforms which we as civil society cannot necessarily reach. So then in the second part, I'll request Debbie and Susan to reflect on what our regional hub leads have spoken about. I'll start with Paz. Paz, if you could introduce yourself and highlight some of the priorities from the Latin American region.
Sure. Thanks, Suchi, and hello, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be present in day one of COP and at the Resilience Hub with such an important colleagues and organizations. My name is Paz Gonzalez. I am representing Latin America and Caribbean. I'm part of Avina Foundation in the climate program. As Suchi mentioned, we've been working with the Resilience Hub for the third year now. And throughout this year, we've been working in 3 of all the main priorities that we want to raise from Latin America. The first one is the importance of increasing Global South representation in decision-making spaces. As you may know, an example of the lack of representation is that last year at COP28, only 50% of the badges were given to 12% of the population, representing Global North population. So that is a balance that we want to change, but not only on having more accreditations, but of also having capacities built, either both in advocating and being present in a meaningful way at COP, but also raising and building key messages for key negotiating topics such as NCQC and GCA, and working with local voices to spread those messages. The second key topic that we've been working on is to secure and promote direct funding for local communities. And not only it's a matter of getting to funding, but also that those projects that are being funded, that they represent the priorities and the needs and include the knowledge of local communities. And the third one, I am not sure if I am using too much of the time, sorry for that, but I'm reaching to the end. The third topic we've been working on is the recognition of the importance of gender inclusion and the role of care work. Women and girls especially carry the responsibility of managing health and safety of their families and communities, and that is why I'm excited to inform everybody that we have now opened a call for projects to fund up to $50,000 projects to work on care and climate, both in Latin America and Caribbean and in Sub-Saharan Africa. So now I will pass it to
back to me. Thank you. Great. Thank you so much. All right. Elizabeth, if we can come to you as someone who is young and has entered this process as a youth, you do identify as a young professional, but you also have set up an organization. You're also part of some of the conversations that are happening in Africa, and which is an extremely important region, such a big continent with very little historical representation. Could you raise some of the priorities that you've been hearing through the last year or so, and what do you expect going forward through this COP?
Thank you so much, and it's so great to be part of this great conversation at the very beginning of COP at this Resilience Hub. My name is Elizabeth Wathuti, an environmentalist and a young climate leader from Africa and based in Kenya. And I'm also the founder of the Green Generation Initiative, where we're working with children, young people, and local communities, helping them build their own resilience through their own locally led solutions on the ground. And I also serve as a commissioner in the Global Commission on the Economics of Water. And I have seen the potential of local communities and youth as well when they are empowered, and especially when resources are decentralized, to get to their local level where they can be able to do and lead solutions on the ground. For example, in the context of water as a thematic and as a board member of Africa's First Water Fund, which is the Apatana Nairobi Water Fund, I have seen the potential of communities. I've seen the potential of women driving their own locally led solutions. And this project, we've been able to have a network of more than 185,000 farmers who are actually making annual sales of $7.8 million. And this is through their own led solutions and through them being able to protect water catchments from the source to prevent the problems downstream. And this has also generated more than 17,000 jobs, and that's green jobs for the young people. And this has been made possible because of the decentralization of the resources to the communities. But there still exist major systematic and systemic gaps, especially when it comes comes to accessing this finance and when it comes to also inclusion in decision-making spaces. Young people, for instance, make up half of the world's population. And in Africa, this number gets higher. Where in sub-Saharan Africa, we have more than 70% of young people. That's people below the age of 30. And at the same time, beyond these numbers, these are people leading solutions on the ground to ramp up action and to act at the scale and the speed that we know is needed to address climate action. However, we see youth at the COP, but we don't see youth when it comes to the decision-making tables, when we're discussing about climate finance and when we are allocating climate finance. I think this is something that is a huge gap that needs to come up at this COP, even in terms of allocation of the finance and in terms of who is present when we're making these decisions in terms of climate finance. And I think here is what we can be able to do at this COP. One, the loss and damage fourth board meeting in December, including the annual high-level dialogue discussions, should include a sub-goal on youth in the decision and also in the design and modalities of the fund. And this means that with these young people, they'll be able to include the young people as part of the matrix within these conversations. And also when it comes to the new collective quantified goal, we must include youth-centered targets and indicators that are going to prevent youth from being marginalized, as it has been seen in the past climate finance mechanisms that have led to a lot of mistrust, especially with the delays in the funds, but also with the fact that most of this finance, even when it is allocated, it is in the form of loans that are non-consensual. And of course, it's my generation, it's the young people that are going to have to live with the debt burden, even in our own countries. So we must be part of the conversations, we must be able to access the resources, and when allocation is being discussed, we must be part of the matrix as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Such a powerful message out there and very clear. Thank you. Noor, coming to you. You represent ICAD, who's been working, in some ways, the regional hubs have been Salim's brainchild, Professor Salimul Haq's brainchild. And you have been relentlessly bringing the COP to the people and people to the COP. Right? If you could share a little more about the priorities from South Asia, that would be great. And we'd love to hear more about the work that you've been doing through the year.
Thank you, Shuchi. Good questions. And also, as we see in the South Asian context, we are very vulnerable, and also, but not vulnerable, we are doing a lot from our end, not waiting for the support. But in context like South Asia, we're facing like new, very intensive cases like flooding, heat waves. These are the new contexts we are facing now in our adaptation. In the previous policies and others documentation, we need to adjust these issues, address as immediate action. So these are the areas we would focusing on, and also trying to, throughout the South Asian network, we are working on the locally led adaptation monitoring issue that we did the virtual conference on Gobeshona, and we also did a virtual South Asian Resilience Hub Summit that engages the lots of collaboration and the issues raising here. So one of the issues is very we need to address is building climate resilience. So in terms of need to understand and prioritize the local actors, and also we need to be in a system, build a system how these local actors can get easy access for financing, and also the challenges they are facing. If we look around the root level, the organization, they are not able to cope up with the facilitations required for a big project. So they need partners, they need help, support. So these are the contexts if we can strengthen and good cases come over, that could be a good solution, like transboundary issues. We can collaborate and fit in our and change our narrative from the vulnerability to the prosperity and resilience and prosperity.
Great, thank you. Do you want to add anything else?
And if you have any points, and I would like.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. moving on, we realize it's a lot to digest, but we would also like to hand over. It's very rare that we get a chance where our high-level speakers are actually listening to the priorities that are being presented and are responding to these priorities. And it would be great to, I can hand over my mic if you need that. It would be great to start with you, Susan, in terms of what are these priorities that have resonated with you, and how do you plan to take them forward as well? If you could shed some light on that.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you. So my name is Susan Chomba, and I'm the director of Vital Landscapes at World Resources Institute in Africa. I'm also a member of the International Panel of Experts on Food Systems, IPES Food, and also an ambassador for the Race to Resilience. So really, really pleased to be here. I think I've had such fantastic inputs there in terms of what we can take forward. I'd like to sort of categorize them into three. The first one is the role of human agency in building resilience, and we've had different aspects of agency, from representation, descriptive representation of the people who really bear the brunt of climate change on the ground in multilateral processes, such as these ones, especially from the group that is working in Latin America in ensuring that we have more representation. But also not just representation. Liz talked a lot, as well as Latin America, on food, on the funding systems, that sometimes it's not just about the representation. What about the capacity? What about the resources? And the last aspect about the agency is thinking about how global politics and global processes like this one then shape people's ability to adapt on the ground. The second one that I'd like to focus on is thinking and acting across scales. I heard for us to be able to build resilience, we need to think and act across scales. Liz from Kenya again gave an example of the Nairobi Water Fund, which is a public-private partnership. So it's a scale. We are more connected than we are separated. So bringing in the private sector into the space, bringing in local communities into the space, bringing in government into the space. But even more interesting, what I heard from her is the temporal scale of our sort of generation, that we have to think about resilience in future, that if we have funds that are supposed to build resilience, but they are putting the young people who are the ones who will be dealing with those debts in future, resilience is not just about now, it's about that kind of temporal thinking. The last point that I had is about socio-ecological resilience. I think you've mentioned about transboundary landscapes, transboundary, recognizing that resilience is not just about humans, it's also about the ecologies. And those ecologies we share, the ecologies at landscape level, and those landscapes can be looked beyond countries, beyond local areas. So the example that you've just given of thinking about transboundary landscapes and thinking that for human societies, it's not just about us as people, it's also about the ecological resilience that then connects the ecologies with the people. So I think that's how I'd like to summarize my takeaway, and thinking that for us to be resilient, it's about the public-private partnerships and thinking across scales and across generations.
Thank you so much. Systems is what I'm hearing. Systemic thinking and systems is what I'm hearing here. Debbie Palmer, you sit in a unique position as someone who is in a funding organization. Can you share a little bit more about how these priorities will feed into your work going forward, and maybe even through this COP?
Super. Thank you, Shushi, very much. And it's great to be sitting here with Susan, who's done a great job already of summarizing what we've heard. But I want to say, first of all, that it's genuinely really lovely to be back at the Resilience Hub this year, because the Hub for me provides not just an opportunity for people to come together, but it provides a home and it provides a representation for communities and voices all around the world. And it's incredibly important to have these voices here at COP. So it was wonderful to hear from the wisdom seekers earlier, who I think ground us all and make us really think about why we're here and what our responsibilities are over the next few weeks. And the UK has accompanied the Race to Resilience throughout the last few years since its journey began at COP26, and we're really proud to be here and to be supporting the Race to Resilience as one of the funders. when I've sort of listened here to Paz and to Elizabeth and to Noor, some of the things that are really coming through to me are the importance of voice and the importance of solidarity. The fact that it is so important to put communities in the driving seat on a whole range of issues around resilience and adaptation to ensure that funding is getting direct to communities, but communities have voice and have agency over how that funding is spent and the way in which it fits together into regional and national plans. We've heard also about the importance from Paz of gender inclusion, and I really, really support that. And we're really proud in the UK government to be doing some work providing micro-insurance in South Asia to women who are affected by extreme heat. And that's something I'll talk a little more about later in the week. But I think it's those sorts of examples where we've got to build the models and we've got to build the evidence base about what works, because we know that women and girls are disproportionately affected by the impacts of climate change, and we really need to ensure that our funding is supporting the most vulnerable. But Elizabeth, also, I think you gave us a really good shout out for youth-centered attention and youth-centered targets. So again, conscious I will have colleagues who are negotiating in the NCQG this week, I'm going to take that away and pass that on to them and say, we've had a call to action and we need to really listen to this. Now, we've got a new government in the UK, and our new Foreign Secretary used his very first set-piece speech, irrespective of all the things that are happening in the world at the moment that he's dealing with. He wanted his very first speech to focus on the climate and nature, and he reiterated that climate and nature will be central to all that the UK does in the years ahead. So he's given us a very, very strong sentence and a very strong direction of travel. And he talked about the fact that there is no pathway to countries' development aspirations without climate resilience and without action on the nature crisis and without access to clean energy. And there's no pathway to a sustainable future without development that leaves no one behind. And so that's really at that's the central spirit with which the UK government comes to COP29 here in Baku this year. And we're really proud to be here. We want to be supporting action. As Jorge said at the very beginning, we want COP29 to facilitate real world progress. We're not here to talk. We're here to deliver in the real world, on the ground, for the people who need it. And we're really keen to make progress this week, in these 2 weeks, on closing the adaptation finance gap, but also closing the implementation gap. So from my side, I just really look forward to the negotiations. We need to come here and we need to do hard work to deliver an NCQG, and an ambitious one. And we also need to ensure we can deliver over the next 2 weeks an ambitious outcome for adaptation finance. And as the Wisdom Seeker said, we need to remember where we come from and why we're here. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We have 5 minutes, and unfortunately, I won't be able to take any questions from the audience, but I want to give all of you a last word. One word for this COP. If you have one word for this COP, could you share that with us? And maybe 1 minute to think, and you start? We can start from you, Debbie, and then go around to the end.
So for me, the word is action.
Great. Thank you. Susan?
Finance.
Lovely. That's finance as the theme. Noor?
So my demand is we need a specific definition for what do you mean by climate finance.
Thank you. Finance again. Elizabeth?
Strong leadership.
Leadership. Paz. Last but not the least.
Being last is the worst. I guess I will go with representation.
Thank you. Great representation. Yes. Go
and
ahead.
commitment.
Commitment. Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, everyone. We shall close with this, but we have one important word left for our closing. We have Nigel Topping here. Nigel, if we could invite you for the closing, it would be great if you could.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's really wonderful to be here. I just very briefly, actually, just reflecting on those final remarks. First of all, I want to thank all of the partners and all of the initiatives that have got behind the Resilience Hub and the Race to Resilience. It feels like this was an innovation a few years ago, which was really overdue to have a physical location in the blue zone, where this very diverse community could gather and advance our collective agenda. I think that those initiatives and those partners have championed participation. And let's look at of the different voices that have to be in the conversation. Those most affected by the climate crisis, but also those with the different sources of power that are needed. Not just top-down power, but bottom-up power, community power, moral authority, ancient wisdom, all the different sources of power which have to be brought together to mobilize. I think that this issue of finance is also the specificity of finance. We have to stop just talking about finance, like adaptation finance, blah. It's so complicated and very different for different bits of the puzzle that we have to get into are we talking about how do we mobilize finance for small and medium-sized enterprises? Are we talking about how do we help smallholder farmers get access to insurance for the first time? Are we talking about how do we mobilize concessional finance for projects? Are we talking about how do we use carbon markets? So we have to. Each of those is very different, and these different people. So I'm glad you raised it. We need to not just talk about adaptation finance or resilience finance, but break it down. But having said that, the most important thing is that this place exists and that this community exists, and of course it's a vast connected community that's just represented here by a small number. And I want to, again, thank all of you for making the Resilience Hub real. I hope that this will continue to be the most lively, the most, I don't want it, not confrontational, the most engaged conversation hub where all of the communities and all of those different sources of power come together to progress the solutions that we need to tackle the climate crisis and that we know are only getting more necessary because we're not doing enough on mitigation. So I want a huge thank you to everybody and really excited to see the Resilience Hub here as a permanent fixture now in COP29. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and a huge round of applause for our panelists who've been working fairly relentlessly through the year. Thank you, and thank you so much. With this, we declare the hub open, I guess.